to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Kate Barton, Global Tax Leader at EY, to discuss the evolving global tax landscape. Kate, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Well, thank you so much, Jill. Delighted to be here with you.
And Kate, as we move into 2022, how do you expect the three major trends that shape the global tax landscape to evolve?
I think there's a lot going on the policy front that's going to impact countries around the world, which impacts our multinationals. First, we're going to see taxes go up. I mean, every country around the world is revenue starved as a result of the pandemic, and so they need more funds to fund their social spending. So taxes are going to go up. We're going to see rate increases as well as new taxes. So that's trend one. Trend two is supply chains. I think COVID showed that a lot of supply chains are disrupted. They need to get closer to the consumer. It's a big issue on multinationals' minds. And then third is the social inequalities, only exacerbated by the pandemic. So there's going to be a redistribution. So we're going to see a lot of action in the days ahead.
So it sounds like business taxes are going to take the same approach as what it sounds like with people with taxes moving higher.
Yes, absolutely. I think business taxes are something to watch. Remember, though, only a small percentage of most countries' funds are actually from business taxes. So you have to look at the business as well as the individuals.
And Kate, how do you think this can impact global investment patterns?
Well, I think where the investment happens could be at issue. So a lot of multinationals will take a look. I think, again, tax is the second thing. I mean, business is first. What do the consumers need? I think that the pandemic showed that goods need to be closer to the consumer. So maybe patterns of behavior in the past where it was more efficient to manufacture in one location. I think now countries and companies are looking at, should they have a multi-hub strategy where they bring more manufacturing sites closer to the consumer? And so where do those get set up? Tax will be certainly one factor in that, not the only factor, but a lot of it is where can they get skilled workers? Because right now, I mean, the workforce is a big issue for many companies around the world.
Right. Well, Kate, that sounds like the perfect storm for the consumer. Certainly, we know what happens when you move manufacturing to Western countries. You get the expense there, which gets passed down to the consumer. We know about inflation. We know we're going to get taxed. We have to pay the piper for all the liquidity that's been injected into the system. So it sounds like the consumer is really the one who's going to be challenged.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that there isn't a lot of impact on the consumer. And I think it's important that corporations continue to thrive because they do hire people. So that's important. People have to work in order to consume. So, how this all ripples through the economy is going to be really important. And the tax code is where most elected officials go to first to figure out how they're going to enact their policies. And so more in that in the days ahead for sure.
And we're seeing more climate-related disruptions to business operations, including impacts from power grids, disruptions to transportation channels, supply chains, as we've been talking about, employee health issues from increased heat and pollution. How will this influence tax policy?
Well, sustainability is a top issue, and it's a big issue for most countries around the world. They're really trying to do good, be good. And so looking again at their tax codes, 80% of green gas emissions come through the supply chain. So not only are companies and countries trying to get supply chains closer to the consumer, they're also trying to decarbonize the supply chain. And so the amount of taxes that are in this area, and I would just say it's a huge issue on global heads of taxes issues and finance. The CFO is very concerned about this because sometimes these taxes are little known and they can come back and bite you and take out margin in the flow of goods. So how this gets maintained and really companies stay on top of is a big issue. Everything from how you wrap your goods, plastic taxes are coming out in Europe. Europe's contemplating a carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is a huge regime that companies have on their minds. So there's just a lot here, definitely, Jill.
So, Kate, when we think about time frame for this, when realistically can we expect to see a shift in tax policy?
I think we'll see a lot more this year with enactment in 2023. That's true for what we call BEPS 2.0, which the model framework came out during the holidays. There is so much in there. We digested that. Many of our clients are looking at that right now, and really trying to understand it. And that all needs to get implemented by 23. Layer on top of that, sustainability taxes and the like. There's a lot heading, to companies to really digest, especially if they're operating in more than one country.
Right. And Kate, that was actually my last question to you. Is the US tax code, in fact, the most complex globally?
Yes, the US is one of the few countries, only 2 countries around the world roughly that have worldwide taxation. And so the US has got a very complex regime, and only further complicated by promises made to comply with the OECD. So right now, the US tax code, which did not get changed at year end through the Build Back Better Act, is non-compliant with the OECD. So how does that get fixed? The complexity right now that multinationals are dealing with are huge, and some of what would otherwise be the US tax base could be eroded and be taxed by other countries because the US tax code's not compliant. So this is a big issue. And how does that get fixed? Does it get fixed, or does it just stay as is? And it's going to be a tremendous amount of reporting that companies have to comply with.
All right, Kate, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.